Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The heat outside hadn't even started yet, and already Staff Sergeant Harper Lang could feel the weight of eyes that didn't believe in her. Inside the canvas briefing tent, soldiers leaned over the map table, discussing convoy routes, ambush points, and fuel stops, voices blending into a low current of practice tension. Everyone had their place. Everyone had a role, except her. Lang stood quietly near the edge, hands clasped behind her back, listening, observing. She learned long ago that silence was a weapon, one most soldiers never learned to use properly. Lieutenant Miller's voice cut through the murmur. Intel reports possible hostiles moving along the eastern ridge. They're after our supplies. We move at 900. A few heads nodded. The usual pre-mission ritual. Adjust gear, mutter curses, joke about things too dark to say in daylight. But across the table, Corporal Jenkins leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Sir, with all due respect," he said, voice sharp enough for everyone to hear, "shouldn't we have Reeves on overwatch? He's got actual combat sniper experience." The air shifted. A few soldiers looked at Lang, then quickly away. Lieutenant Miller frowned. "Orders came from command, Corporal. Staff Sergeant Lang has the assignment." Jenkins didn't hide his contempt. "Great. Our lives in the hands of an admin transfer who shot perfect scores on a sunny range day." The words hit their mark. Not that Lang showed it. Her face remained impassive, her blue eyes steady as she lifted the heavy Barrett case from beside her boots. She'd carried heavier things than that before, doubt mostly. Outside, the desert heat was already rising. 3 hours later, she lay prone on a rocky outcropping, her body flattened against the earth, half wrapped in a thermal shroud. The air shimmered with heat distortion, the horizon rippling like liquid glass. The Barrett M1 07.50 BMG rested solidly on its bipod before her, a machine built for impossible distances. Specialist Chen, her spotter, crouched a few feet away, scanning with high-powered optics. His breath was uneven. "Convoys rolling through the valley now," he murmured. "No sign of weight. Dust trail, eastern approach." Lang adjusted her scope by half a degree. "I see it. 1 technical, 3 support vehicles. Range 5,300 meters, she said softly. Chen looked up at her, startled. "That's beyond max effective range." She didn't answer. The radio crackled with tension. "Overwatch, this is convoy actual. Hostiles spotted. They'll reach the ridge before we clear the valley. We need options." Lang steadied her breathing. "Stand by." Chen's voice trembled. "We can't make that shot, Sergeant. No one can." Lang's world shrank to the scope, to crosshairs, distance, and math. Wind direction, air density, temperature, barrel heat, Coriolis drift. Her fingers brushed the dials with deliberate precision, adjusting for invisible forces that separated life from death. She whispered to no one, "Sending it." The Barrett roared. The recoil slammed into her shoulder like a living thing. The world paused. 5.3 seconds of silence. Then across the valley, a puff of dust and flame. The Technical's engine block disintegrated in a bloom of sparks. The vehicle veered, rolled, and exploded, blocking the narrow path behind it. The following trucks slammed into its wreckage. Chaos, confusion, and then nothing but smoke. Chen gawked through his scope. "Direct hit, target disabled." The radio stayed dead for several long seconds. Then Jenkins's voice, disbelieving. "What the hell just happened?" Lang exhaled slowly. "Threat neutralized, route cleared, proceed with caution." Her voice carried no pride, only completion. Chen was still staring. "That shot was impossible." "Log it as target neutralization at 5,300 meters, she said calmly, breaking down her rifle. "Note wind conditions in your report." He nodded numbly, still trying to understand how a human hand could calculate that much chaos into a single point of precision. Back at Forward Operating Base Falcon, The mess hall buzzed with the kind of talk that travels faster than gunfire. Jenkins sat at a table surrounded by wide-eyed soldiers, replaying the scene for the fifth time. "I swear I saw it. The technical just blew apart. 5,300 meters. No way in hell a human makes that shot." "Who took it?" one soldier asked. "Lang," Jenkins muttered. "Staff Sergeant Harper Lang, the admin transfer." They all fell silent. The story was already turning into myth, even before dinner cooled. When Lang entered the room, the conversation stopped entirely. She walked to the food line, collected her tray, and sat alone. Chen joined her moments later, still shaken. "The whole base is talking about it," he said quietly. Lang stabbed a piece of bread with her fork. "It was just a shot, specialist." "No," he said, shaking his head. "Nobody makes that shot." "Someone did." Chen hesitated. "Who are you really?" Before she could answer, Captain Reynolds approached their table. "Staff Sergeant Lang, command wants a full debrief. 800 hours." "Yes, sir." As he walked away, Reynolds's eyes met hers, a look that said more than his words ever would. Later that night, the captain closed his office door and lowered the blinds. The base was quiet except for the hum of generators. He opened a secure comm channel on an encrypted device. "She performed as expected," he said. A voice crackled through the static. "The shot. Exactly as predicted, beyond what should be possible." "Good, maintain her cover. The fewer people who know who she really is, the better." Outside in the shadowed hallway, Lang stood still listening. The words didn't surprise her. She'd always known there were layers to this mission. Layers she wasn't supposed to peel back. The next morning the desert looked almost peaceful. The wind had shifted, bringing cooler air. Lang jogged the perimeter alone, her pace steady, her mind quiet. Control was everything, body, breath, thought. When she reached the secure bunker, Captain Reynolds was waiting. "They're ready for you." Inside, a monitor flickered to life. The stern face of Colonel Garrett filled the screen. No greetings, no small talk. "Report, Longshot." "Cover intact," Lang replied evenly. "Yesterday's engagement raised questions but no suspicions. Mission parameters unchanged. Investigating possible informant in convoy routing." "Good," Garrett said. "Use their curiosity. It may work to your advantage. Remember your training." Training. The word opened a door in her mind 5 years earlier, a facility buried in the mountains of North Carolina. No insignias, no records. 20 of the military's best marksmen gathered for what they thought was advanced sniper school. It was selection. Lang remembered the frozen lake, targets across 2 miles of shifting wind. The lead instructor had said, "Physics says these shots can't be made. Prove physics wrong." 19 failed, she didn't. For the next 18 months, she vanished from official record, training under conditions that didn't exist, with instructors who didn't have names. She learned to process ballistic data faster than computers. They called her the human algorithm. Now, sitting in the mess hall surrounded by soldiers who thought she was just another transfer, she felt the distance between her and them more sharply than any physical range. Jenkins watched her from across the room, whispering to 2 NCOs. "I checked Fort Bragg records," he said. "No mention of her ever being there." "Maybe it's classified," one replied. "Or maybe she's not who she says she is." Lang kept eating, eyes fixed on her tray, but every word reached her. She'd been trained to hear heartbeats through chaos. Whispers were easy. Later on the firing range, she deliberately missed 2 out of 5 long-distance targets. Enough to appear competent, not enough to look exceptional. Too much accuracy raised questions. Jenkins watched from the sidelines, suspicion growing behind his narrowed eyes. That evening in the barracks, Lang cleaned her rifle slowly, piece by piece. Precision was meditation. Every click, every motion a mantra. Control what you can. Anticipate what you can't. She looked at her reflection in the rifle's steel bolt. The face staring back wasn't the one that had joined the army years ago. Something in the eyes had changed, colder, sharper, calculating. She didn't want to think about the other faces she'd seen fade away during training. Those who couldn't keep up, those who broke. At 200 hours, her secure line blinked. A single message appeared. Maintain observation. Possible internal compromise. Trust only Reynolds. Lang stared at the words for a long time before erasing them. Out in the dark, the desert wind carried a sound like distant thunder, or maybe memory. No one at the base knew what Harper Lang was capable of. Not really. To them, she was a mystery wrapped in protocol. To her, they were reminders of a world she'd once believed in. But somewhere between the mountain facility and the desert valley, belief had turned into something else. Something quieter, stronger. It wasn't glory that drove her, or recognition. It was something far simpler. Responsibility. Because she knew what happened when people like her, people who could do the impossible, forgot why they did it in the first place. The next dawn would bring new orders, new missions, and new questions she couldn't afford to answer. But for tonight, she allowed herself a rare luxury. She watched the stars over the desert sky, the same stars that had once guided her through the Carolina woods during training, when she still thought she was becoming a soldier. She hadn't realized then, she was becoming something else entirely. And as the base lights flickered in the distance, Harper Lang whispered to herself, barely audible, carried away by the wind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it just acts. Why did they send her to Position Delta, the one no sniper would ever choose? The question echoed in Lang's mind as she studied the topographic map spread across the operations table. The terrain lines didn't lie. Delta was a pit, low elevation, limited visibility, multiple blind spots. It wasn't an overwatch point. It was a coffin with coordinates. The tent hummed with pre-mission tension. Officers bent over the map, radios crackled, and somewhere outside a generator coughed to life. Captain Reynolds stood at the front, his tone clipped but calm. Intelligence reports increased enemy activity along Route Bravo. Command has authorized another convoy. Priority cargo. Corporal Jenkins leaned over the map, tracing a finger along the narrow valley. Route Bravo runs straight through Ambush Alley. The last 3 convoys that tried it never made it through. Reynolds didn't flinch. That's why we're changing our approach. Multiple overwatch positions, full coverage. He nodded toward Lieutenant Miller. Miller pointed at the map. Staff Sergeant Lang will take Position Delta, covering the southern approach. Lang's eyes followed the marker. She could see the problem instantly. A sniper there would be blind to half the route. Jenkins noticed her silence and smiled faintly, not kindly. Reynolds finished the briefing. Major Wilson from Regional Command will accompany this mission as observer. A tall man stepped into the tent, crisp uniform, cold eyes, the kind of presence that measured rooms before speaking. "Carry on," Wilson said. "I'm just here to evaluate procedure." When the meeting ended, Lang waited until the others left. "Sir," she said to Miller, requesting clarification on Position Delta. "The terrain blocks line of sight." "Are you questioning my tactical assessment, Sergeant?" "No, sir, just confirming parameters." "Your parameters," Miller snapped, "are to follow orders. Position Delta clear." "Crystal, sir." She saluted and walked out before he could see the flash of something colder behind her eyes. The convoy rolled out at 900. 8 vehicles, fuel, ammunition, food, the artery that kept Falcon alive. Dust rose in plumes behind them as they crawled into the valley. Lang rode in the last Humvee Barrett case at her feet, eyes half closed, listening to the hum of the engine and the soft click of her thoughts aligning. "Good luck up there," Jenkins said as they stopped near her drop-off point. "Try not to lose sight of us." False concern disguised as humor. She didn't reply, just shouldered her pack and started the climb. The desert stretched around her, endless, harsh, honest. It didn't lie like people did. Chen followed, breathing hard, lugging the spotting scope. "This position's a joke," he muttered once they reached Delta. "Limited visibility, no elevation, no escape routes." Lang scanned the ridges. "Miller knows this terrain. So why put us here?" Lang didn't answer. She was already calculating alternatives. 400 meters northeast, higher ground, clear sightlines, stable footing. "But those aren't our orders." "Orders will get them killed." She started walking. "Your call, specialist, follow me or stay." Chen hesitated, then grabbed his gear. "I'm coming." The new position was everything Delta wasn't: elevated, wide view of the valley, multiple exit routes. Lang set up quickly, her body sinking into the rhythm that quieted everything else. Bipod locked, optics adjusted, wind flags placed. Below, the convoy snaked through the valley like a slow-moving artery. "Convoy entering sector," Chen reported. "No hostiles, wait." His voice tightened. "Movement, eastern ridge." Lang found it instantly. A shimmer of metal, the glint of sunlight on a barrel. "Contact 1,500 meters. Machine gun nest." "Convoy actual, this is Overwatch," she transmitted calmly. "You're about to walk into a kill zone. Adjust course 50 meters north." Gunfire erupted before the radio responded. Echoes thundered off the canyon walls. Jenkins's voice shouted through static. "We're taking fire. Where's our Overwatch?" Lang's finger found the trigger before he finished the sentence. The Barrett kicked. One shot, the gunner folded backward. A second shot, another target dropped. Each round a controlled heartbeat. "They're moving like pros," Chen said. "Not militia, coordinated, disciplined." "Military tactics," Lang confirmed. "Someone trained them." For 12 minutes the valley burned. Lang's rifle spoke in thunderclaps, each shot finding a target as if the bullets themselves sought justice. Chen fed her data, wind, distance, new positions, his hands shaking, his voice steadier than he felt. Then silence. Smoke drifted upward in thin gray ribbons. 2 vehicles hit, 3 soldiers wounded, all alive. "Convoy secure," Lang reported. By the time she and Chen descended to rejoin the others, the dust had settled, but the air was still charged, suspicion, awe, something unspoken. Major Wilson stood with Captain Reynolds near the damaged vehicles. Jenkins stomped toward Lang, fury barely restrained. "You abandoned your assigned post." "Your assigned post," she corrected, "was tactically unsound. I repositioned for better coverage." "That's insubordination." "That's initiative," a new voice cut in. "Wilson." He stepped forward, eyes narrowing in appraisal. "Initiative that saved lives." Jenkins opened his mouth again, but Wilson's glare silenced him. "Stand down, Corporal." He turned back to Lang. "Walk with me." They moved away from the others, the desert wind carrying sand and secrets. "Impressive work today," Wilson said after a moment. "Reminds me of an operation I observed near Kandahar, a unit that didn't officially exist. Their sniper made shots like yours." He paused, lighting a cigarette. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Lang's gaze stayed forward. "No, sir." Wilson exhaled smoke. "They called it Project Longshot, experimental program, precision beyond known limits." His eyes flicked toward her. "Sound familiar?" She didn't blink. "Never heard of it." He smiled faintly. "Then explain how an administrative transfer outshoots every sniper I've ever seen." "Good training, natural aptitude." Wilson's voice softened, dangerous. "I know what you are. The question is what you're doing here." Lang considered her words carefully. "Classified deployment." Wilson nodded slowly. "Respectable answer. We'll talk again, Sergeant." As she turned to leave, his tone changed, a hint of threat beneath the calm. "Information flows both ways, remember that." Back at the convoy, Jenkins watched her pass with a look that had changed. Not disbelief anymore, something else, fear. That night, the base glowed under floodlights. Soldiers moved with the restless energy of people who'd survived something they didn't fully understand. Lang sat alone in the gym long after curfew, methodically working through exercises that demanded stillness more than strength, the kind that trained her fingers to control heartbeats, not weights. The door creaked open. Chen stepped inside, surprised to find her there. Didn't know anyone used this place at night. Lang didn't look up. Helps me think. He hesitated, then joined her. For a while, the only sounds were breathing and the muted thud of movement. Finally, he spoke. Jenkins sabotaged you today. That position Delta, it was a setup. I know. And you're not angry. Anger clouds judgment. Most people would have broken his jaw. I'm not most people. Chen studied her. Who are you really? She wiped sweat from her forehead, eyes distant. Just a soldier doing her job. He laughed softly. Right, and I'm just a tourist. Then quieter. Whatever you are, you saved us. That's enough for me. Before she could answer, her secure phone vibrated coded signal. 200 hours command bunker. At precisely 2 a.m., she entered the comms room. Reynolds waited, expression grave. On the monitor, a map of recent ambush sites blinked with red markers. They're coordinated, Reynolds said. Every convoy ambushed at the most vulnerable points. Whoever's feeding intel knows our routes before they're finalized. Leak inside the Tactical Ops Center, Lang concluded. Exactly, and it gets worse. The attackers today used U.S. tactics. Someone trained them, maybe former special operations. Lang felt a slow chill spread through her, or current. Reynolds nodded grimly. Major Wilson's been asking questions about you, through back channels, the kind he shouldn't have access to. You think he's the leak? I think we need to be careful. Trust no one outside this room. Lang studied the map, red dots scattered across the desert like drops of blood. Then we feed false data, she said. See who moves on it. Already in motion, Reynolds replied. But whoever this is, they're good, and they're close. Later, back in her quarters, Lang unpacked her gear. Her movements were slow, deliberate, control, always control. But then, a small anomaly. A stitch slightly raised on the inside seam of her rucksack. She examined it closely. A listening device, microtransmitter, sophisticated, military grade. Someone was monitoring her. She didn't remove it. Instead, she smiled faintly and left it where it was, a snare for whoever was listening. At her desk, she opened her notebook and began writing ballistic calculations, deliberately wrong equations, faulty windage data, exaggerated error margins. A false vulnerability for her unseen audience. The trap was set. Outside, the desert slept under a blanket of dust and moonlight. But Lang didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, rifle across her lap, eyes fixed on the horizon. The war out there was simple, bullets and blood. The war inside the wire was worse. It was fought with secrets, suspicion, and silence. And she was right where they wanted her. The perfect soldier no one trusted, the perfect scapegoat if things went wrong. But she had one advantage they didn't. She'd already been trained to survive the impossible. Why did the base sirens wail at 04:13 when no one was supposed to be awake? Lang was already up. She'd been sitting motionless by the window, staring at the dark horizon when the first alarm cut through the stillness. A moment later, the ground shook. Then again, a second, heavier impact that rattled the metal frames of her quarters. The loudspeaker came alive with clipped panic. Base Falcon under indirect fire. All personnel to stations. Lang was moving before the words finished. Combat gear on, rifle slung, earpiece connected. She burst from the barracks into chaos. Tracers streaked the night sky like angry comets. Somewhere near the motor pool, a fuel truck burned, an inferno twisting against the wind. Mortars, someone shouted. She dropped to a knee beside a concrete barrier, scanning the ridgeline through her NVGs. Direction 240, she murmured into comms. Elevation high, they're bracketing the base. Captain Reynolds's voice came through the channel, calm but tight. Lang, locate and counter. Authorization granted. Copy that. She sprinted toward the armory. Chen was already there, pale and wide-eyed, loading gear. They're hitting from 2 ridges at once. Grab the scope and pack, she ordered. We're going hunting. They moved through smoke and confusion, ducking between walls and shadows until they reached the perimeter. Lang climbed the watchtower, scoped the horizon, found the faint, rhythmic flash of muzzle fire far beyond the outer perimeter. Range 3100, Chen said, breathless. Wind 5 meters from northeast. Lang dialed her optics. Mortar team 5 men adjusting. Too far, Sergeant, you'll never. She fired. The first shot cracked through the pre-dawn air, echoing across the valley. A second later, the flash vanished. 2 silhouettes fell, unmoving. The others scattered too late. Another shot, another burst of light, and the ridge fell silent. Mortar team neutralized, she reported. But the radio remained loud with other voices. Panic, confusion, crossfire. Enemy inside the wire. Repeat, inside the wire. Lang froze. That wasn't possible, not without help. She and Chen slid down the ladder, sprinting toward the operations building. Gunfire erupted near the fuel depot. Lang dropped to prone, sighted, and fired twice. 2 intruders dropped before they could reach the gate. Chen's voice shook. They're in our uniforms. Lang's eyes narrowed. Then this isn't an attack, it's a message. They reached the TOC, Tactical Operations Center, just as Reynolds emerged, shouting into his radio. His face was ashen. They hit the server room. Security footage wiped. Casualties. 5-2 missing. Lang's stomach tightened. Who's missing? He hesitated. Lieutenant Miller and Major Wilson. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Lang said quietly, this wasn't about destruction, it was extraction. By sunrise, the smoke had thinned, but Falcon looked like a scar on the desert. Medics moved between burned-out vehicles. Engineers worked to restore comms. Every soldier wore the same expression, disbelief edged with anger. Chen found Lang sitting on an overturned crate, silent, watching the horizon. You think Wilson was behind it? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Wilson was never here to evaluate. He was here to retrieve something. Retrieve what? She looked at him, her voice low. Me. Chen's brow furrowed. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to, she said softly. It just has to be true. Reynolds approached, a grim look on his face. Lang commands pulling us back to Bastion for debrief. They want you first. She nodded. Figures. The flight back was silent. The Black Hawk cut through the desert air, rotors pounding like a mechanical heartbeat. Lang sat by the door, helmet off, staring down at the endless tan expanse. Somewhere out there, Wilson and Miller were ghosts now, men who'd either vanished or defected. At Bastion, Lang was led into a small, windowless room. A single chair, a camera in the corner, the kind of place where truth was measured by silence. Colonel Garrett appeared on the monitor. You were compromised. Lang's jaw tightened, not by choice. Explain the infiltration. Internal breach. Someone fed coordinates, wiped logs. Wilson disappeared before we secured him. Garrett's eyes narrowed. We believe Wilson extracted sensitive personnel data, specifically from the Longshot program. Lang said nothing. Garrett leaned forward slightly. He took files on you. Her pulse didn't change. Then he knows what I can do. Exactly, Garrett said, and he intends to use it. Lang's voice was calm, but there was an edge underneath. To sell it. Garrett nodded. To the highest bidder. Foreign acquisition networks, black markets, rogue agencies. They all want long-shot technology. She stared at the table. So what's my next move? Find him, Garrett said, and erase what he knows. There was no hesitation in his tone, none in hers either. But something inside her shifted, a small, quiet ache. Because it wasn't just a man she was being ordered to kill. It was a part of the truth she'd once sworn to serve. 2 nights later, Lang stood alone on the tarmac as a C-130 idled behind her. The mission file in her hand bore no insignia, no name, just coordinates. Northern mountains, cold terrain, old ghosts. Chen approached, face drawn. You're going alone. She nodded. Need to know. You think Wilson's really gone rogue? I think he stopped pretending. He looked at her, struggling for words. You ever get tired of being the weapon? She didn't look at him. Weapons don't get tired, people do. The plane lifted off before dawn, climbing into a pale sky streaked with clouds. Lang sat in the jump seat, the cold metal pressing against her spine. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, she let herself remember. Her first shot as a recruit, the echo through the trees, the instructor's voice saying, "You'll never hear applause for what you do, just silence. Learn to live with it." She had. Hours later, she landed at a forward outpost near the mountains. A small detachment awaited her, local operatives. No insignia, all business. Target believed to be moving through the border villages, one said. Intel suggests he's not alone. Who's with him? Unknown, possibly Miller. Lang nodded, checking her gear. Any civilians? Always, the operative said grimly. It's that kind of war. The snow began before nightfall, soft, steady, relentless. Lang trudged through it, each step measured, rifle strapped across her chest. The silence here was different from the desert, heavier, almost sacred. Her comms crackled softly. Reaper 1, this is base watch. We have thermal hits, 2 signatures in the village ahead. Copy, moving to intercept. She advanced through the narrow alleys, breath ghosting in the freezing air. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The smell of smoke hung low. Inside one half-collapsed building, movement flickered, 2 figures hunched near a fire. Lang raised her scope. Wilson and Miller, both armed, both alive. She steadied her aim, finger brushing the trigger. But then Miller turned slightly, and Lang froze. He was bleeding, badly. Wilson was tending to him, bandaging his side. No threat posture, no ambush, just survival. Her heartbeat slowed. The order was clear, erase what he knows, but orders were easy, understanding was. She whispered into comms, I have eyes on target. Garrett's voice came through, cold as the snow around her. Execute. Lang exhaled once, twice, and lowered the rifle. Negative, she said, not yet. Say again, Longshot. Negative. I need intel confirmation before engagement. There was a pause, then clipped in final, that's not your call. The line went dead. Lang stayed in position, watching through her scope. Wilson was speaking to Miller, but the audio pickup was faint. She adjusted her parabolic mic, caught fragments. Used you, Harper. Project wasn't about defense. It was about control, behavioral conditioning, emotional dampening. You weren't trained, you were programmed. Lang's grip tightened. Wilson continued, voice raw. They think you're their greatest weapon, but they don't realize what happens when a weapon starts thinking for itself. For a long moment she didn't breathe. Then she whispered to herself, barely audible, he's lying. But the tremor in her voice betrayed doubt. She remembered nights in the facility, the endless drills, the chemical suppressants, the way time blurred until she forgot her own reflection. What if Wilson wasn't lying? She took one step forward, then stopped. Snow fell thicker now, muffling the world. Her comms stayed silent. She could kill him, end the mission, end the questions. But questions had a way of living longer than answers. She backed away, disappearing into the storm. Hours later, As dawn broke pale and quiet over the mountains, she found herself sitting on a ridge overlooking the village. Smoke rose from chimneys. Life went on. Her voice soft, almost a whisper. They trained me to end lives at impossible distances, but no one taught me how to live with the space that follows. The wind carried her words away, and far below in the fatting snow, the two men vanished into the white. Why did the message self-delete before she could finish reading it? Lang had been walking along the ridge for hours, snow crunching softly under her boots when her secure device vibrated once, a coded transmission, the kind that came through hidden channels. She stopped, shielding the faint glow beneath her glove. The message was short. Return compromised. Do not trust command. Delete after reading. Then before she could react, the text dissolved into static. Her breath fogged the cold air. She stood motionless, pulse steady but mind racing. Someone inside the system was watching her. Someone who wanted her alive or silenced on their own terms. She scanned the horizon again. No movement, no comms traffic, just the hiss of falling snow and the faint hum of wind between the ridges. When she finally moved, it was with purpose. Down the slope, through the tree line, to the abandoned listening post that locals said still carried echoes of old wars. It was perfect, remote, dead, forgotten. Inside, she set up her rifle near the window, then stripped her gear until only her breathing remained. The silence pressed in around her like a living thing. She opened her field notebook, the one with false calculations, and began to write again, this time not for the enemy who might be listening, but for herself. If they built me to be predictable, they failed. A shadow crossed the doorway. She turned, hand already on her sidearm. Chen stood there, frost clinging to his hood. You didn't think you'd lose me that easily, did you? She lowered the weapon. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, he said. Command calling you rogue. How fast did they say it? Faster than the bodies cooled at Falcon. Lang exhaled slowly, then they're cleaning house. He stepped closer. Tell me what's going on. She hesitated. The last layer of secrecy had always been the hardest to break, but Chen had earned more than silence. They built a program called Longshot, she said finally. Not about marksmanship, about control. They found ways to suppress fear, heighten precision, erase hesitation. The perfect sniper isn't the best shooter. It's the one who never questions why. Chen swallowed hard. And you? I was the prototype that didn't break. He stared at her. You're saying they altered you. Conditioned, programmed, call it what you want. I was trained to process data faster than I could feel it. And now? She met his gaze. Now I feel too much. A long silence passed between them. Outside, wind howled through the gaps in the walls. Chen finally spoke. What do you want to do? Lang looked down at her gloved hands, the faint tremor returning not from fear, but from something worse. Memory. I want to know what I am when no one's giving orders. Before he could answer, the faint buzz of a drone broke the stillness. Both dropped instantly, scanning the windows. A dark shape drifted overhead, small, quiet, watching. Recon drone, Chen whispered. Military pattern. Lang cursed under her breath. They found us. She grabbed the Barrett, chambered around, and sighted through the window. Wind steady, angle sharp. She squeezed the trigger, the drone disintegrated midair, raining metal fragments into the snow. Let's move, she said. They packed fast, leaving nothing but footprints. By nightfall, they'd reached an old rail tunnel that cut through the mountains, half collapsed, half forgotten. Lang lit a single lantern and leaned her rifle against the wall. The air smelled of rust and cold water. Chen sat across from her, rubbing his hands for warmth. If command's after you, they'll come with everything they have. I know. You can't run forever. I'm not running, she said quietly. I'm waiting for them to make their first mistake. He frowned, which is. thinking I'm still theirs. Hours later, as Chen slept, Lang stayed awake, staring into the dark. Her mind replayed Wilson's words over and over. You weren't trained. You were programmed. It wasn't the truth that hurt. It was how easily it fit. She remembered the tests, how they'd measured her heartbeat while showing her footage of civilian casualties, how they'd timed her emotional response, how they'd praised her for not flinching. They'd mistaken numbness for strength. At dawn, she left Chen sleeping and stepped outside. The snow had stopped. The world was blue and still. Somewhere far below, the valley smoked faintly where villages burned, someone else's war creeping closer. She raised her scope, scanning, then froze. 2 armored vehicles crawling up the mountain road. They'd found her. She ran back inside, shaking Chen awake. Move now. They sprinted through the tunnel, boots pounding against wet stone. Behind them, engines roared closer, voices shouted. Lang reached the far end, shoved Chen behind a rock, then turned and raised her rifle. The first armored unit appeared, heavy plating, mounted gun, no insignia. Not standard U.S. military. Private contractors, she said, Wilson's men. She fired once, the driver slumped. Another shot, another explosion, but there were too many. Chen shouted over the gunfire, We're boxed in. Not yet. She grabbed a smoke grenade from her vest, pulled the pin and rolled it down the slope. Gray plumes rose instantly, covering their retreat. They moved fast, cutting through trees and ravines until the sound of engines faded. They didn't stop until night fell again. Campfire light flickered against Lang's face. Calm, unreadable, the way it always was before she broke. Chen handed her a ration pack. You think Wilson sent them? I know he did. Then what's the plan? She stared into the fire. He wants me alive, that's his mistake. Silence, only the crackle of flames. Then Chen said quietly, You don't have to do this alone. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the fatigue, the loyalty, the quiet defiance that came not from orders but from choice. Why are you helping me? She asked. He shrugged. Because you didn't pull the trigger back there, because you hesitated, and that means there's still a person in there worth saving. Her eyes softened just slightly. You shouldn't bet your life on that. Already did. They sat there in the cold, sharing silence like an oath neither wanted to speak. Somewhere beyond the ridge, lightning flashed distant, slow, but there was no thunder, just the deep hum of something unnatural. Lang stood, scanning the horizon. Then she saw it, lights moving in formation, far too steady for aircraft. Drones, she whispered, hundreds of them. Chen's voice cracked, command. She shook her head, number Wilson's network. The machines advanced like a storm of glass. She counted their movement patterns, organized, precise. He was hunting her with her own algorithms. The first missile struck half a mile away, turning the forest into fire. Run, she shouted. They tore through the trees, explosions behind them. Heat seared the air. Lang grabbed Chen as a shockwave threw them both into the snow. Her ears rang, her body screamed, but she forced herself up. They reached a ravine, half-frozen water glinting below. No time to think. She pushed him over the edge. Jump! They hit hard, rolled, and lay there gasping as debris rained down around them. When the noise finally faded, she realized how still the world had become again. Chen coughed, blood on his lip. You good? Lang nodded. Better than we should be. He smiled weakly. Then what now? She looked up the ravine where smoke curled against the pale sky. Now we stop running. For hours they followed the river, until they reached an old communications relay buried in ice, another ghost from another war. Inside, the power still hummed faintly. She booted an ancient terminal and began typing commands, fingers flying faster than thought. What are you doing? Chen asked. Setting bait. Lines of code scrolled across the cracked screen, encrypted frequencies, spoofed coordinates, false transmissions. She rerouted their signal to appear 200 miles east. "If Wilson's tracking us," she said, "he'll go there, not here." Chen watched her work, awe and fear mixing in his expression. "You sure this will fool him?" She smiled faintly. "He taught me everything he knows, but not everything I learned." When the data loop was complete, she powered down the terminal. The hum died, leaving only the sound of wind through broken walls. For the first time in days, she let herself exhale fully. Chen sat beside her. "You think Command's still after you?" "Command doesn't care about me," she said. "They care about what I represent, proof that their creation went off script." He looked at her quiet. "Then what are you going to do?" She thought about the word creation, the way it tasted like something less than human. "I'm going to finish what they started," she said softly, "but on my terms." Outside, the night deepened, stars sharp against the black sky, the kind of silence you only find after everything has burned. Lang leaned her head back against the wall, eyes half closed. "They wanted me to be precise. I learned precision. They wanted me to be unbreakable. I learned how to bend. But they never taught me what to do with conscience." Chen turned to her. "What does it tell you?" She smiled faintly. "That survival isn't victory, not yet." Far away, a faint explosion flickered, her false coordinates doing their work. Wilson would be chasing ghosts by morning. For now she had time. But time, she knew, was just another kind of target always closing in. And as the night wind whispered through the ruins, Harper Lang finally allowed herself to feel what the program had spent years trying to erase. Fear. Not of dying, but of what she might become if she didn't stop them first. Why did the mountains feel so familiar, like a memory buried under gunfire and snow? Lang moved through the frozen forest before dawn, each step deliberate, rifle low, senses open. The river behind her had gone quiet, sealed beneath a film of ice. Ahead, the world was all white and shadow. She knew these ridges. She'd trained on them once, years ago, when she still believed the training meant something. Chen trudged beside her, silent except for his breath. His eyes darted between the trees, nerves raw. "You sure this is the right direction?" Lang nodded slowly. "It's not about direction, it's about instinct." He glanced at her. "And where's that leading you?" She hesitated, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Home, or what used to pass for it." By midday, they reached the plateau, a wide clearing scarred with old blast marks and rusted fencing. At its center, half buried in snow and ice, stood a facility made of steel and silence. The paint had long peeled from its surface, but the insignia was still faintly visible beneath the frost. A winged bullet over a circle. "Long shot." Chen exhaled softly. "It's real." Lang didn't answer. She was staring at the entrance gate, bent, charred, the remains of an explosion years old. She stepped closer, boots crunching in the snow. "I trained here," she murmured, "before they shut it down." "What happened?" Officially, she knelt, brushing snow from the ground. Beneath it, spent shell casings glinted dull in the pale light. "They called it an accident." "And unofficially?" She stood slowly. "We stopped following orders." Inside, the corridors were dark, long, and cold. Their flashlights cut narrow paths through dust and ruin. Equipment lay scattered, monitors shattered, walls pocked with bullet holes. A place erased from time but not from consequence. Every step brought something back. The smell of oil, the echo of boots on tile, the sterile tone of instructors who never gave names. Chen stopped beside a sealed door marked Observation Room 3. "Looks like this one's still intact." Lang placed her hand on the biometric pad. It flickered once, then turned green. The door hissed open. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Rows of monitors lined the walls, powered by some residual current from the backup grid. Lang walked to the center console, fingers brushing across the keys. The screens flickered to life. Footage, dozens of clips. She pressed play. A younger version of herself appeared on the screen, sitting in a white chair, eyes vacant, electrodes attached to her temples. A man's voice off camera said, "Test sequence 12. Emotional suppression threshold." The younger Lang didn't move, didn't blink. Subject demonstrates no physiological response to trauma imagery. Proceed to live stimulus. Another clip, another test. Gunfire, pain, screams. Her voice, calm and precise, reciting wind speeds and angles as though none of it mattered. Chen turned away, sickened. They did this to you. Lang's expression didn't change. They did worse to the ones who failed. She clicked to another file. A roster appeared, 20 names, 12 marked deceased, 4 marked MIA, 2 marked active. Her name, and one other. Wilson Nathaniel J. She stared at it, breath shallow. He wasn't my handler, she said slowly. He was my predecessor. Chen frowned. Predecessor. They trained him before me. He failed the empathy suppression. He started asking questions, so they buried the project until me. The realization cut deep, clean, quiet. He wasn't hunting her because he betrayed the program. He was hunting her because he knew what it did. Lang pulled a hard drive from the console, slid it into her pack. We need to get this out. But before she could finish, a voice echoed through the intercom, warped, metallic but unmistakable. You finally came back. Chen froze. Who? Lang's eyes narrowed. Wilson. You always were predictable, the voice continued, calm, measured. I was hoping you'd find your way home. Lang scanned the ceiling, faint static hum, hidden speakers. Where are you? Everywhere, he said softly. You were supposed to be perfect, the proof that the program worked, but you hesitated twice. She felt the memory hit her, the sniper shot she didn't take, the order she defied. You think you broke free, Harper, Wilson said, but you're still running the script, still following the impulse we designed, the need to finish the mission. Then let me finish it, she said coldly. Face me. Static crackled, then the facility lights flickered to life. In the hallway beyond the observation room, heavy footsteps echoed, boots, measured, deliberate. Lang raised her rifle. Stay behind me. The figure appeared at the far end, tall, hooded, armor lined with frost. He moved with the calm confidence of someone who'd lived through too many endings. Wilson removed his hood. The years had carved lines into his face, but his eyes were clear and unbearably sad. You shouldn't have come, he said. You brought me here. He nodded slightly. I wanted you to see what they made of us, to remember. I remember enough. Do you? He gestured toward the screens behind her. They didn't just condition you to kill. They conditioned you to obey. Every decision you think is yours was written into your muscle memory. That's not true. Then prove it. He lowered his weapon. Shoot me. For a long moment, she didn't move. The rifle felt heavier than it ever had. Chen whispered, don't. Wilson's voice softened. You can't, can you? Because deep down, the part of you they own still needs authorization. Lang's finger trembled on the trigger. I don't need permission. Then why are you shaking? The silence that followed was unbearable. Her heart pounded against her ribs, every instinct fighting every order she'd ever learned. Then slowly, she lowered the rifle. Wilson smiled faintly, not in victory but in recognition. That's what they never understood. Humanity isn't weakness, it's resistance. Before she could answer, a sound tore through the facility, the heavy roar of engines above. Chen ran to the window. Hellos, multiple, they found us. Wilson turned, voice suddenly sharp. They're not here for you, Harper. They're here for me. Lang's eyes hardened. Then we move now. He shook his head. No time, they'll level the place. He tossed her a data chip, small, silver, marked with the long-shot insignia. Everything you need to end it. Names, files, evidence. Take it and go. She stared at it. Come with us. He smiled, tired, sad. You still think you can save everyone? Wilson. Go. The ceiling shook. Dust rained from above. Chen grabbed her arm. Lang. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, the weight of the past pressing down like gravity. Then she turned and ran. They sprinted through the collapsing corridors, metal groaning, flames licking at the edges of memory. Behind them, Wilson's voice echoed through the intercom one last time. They'll call you a traitor. Let them. Truth doesn't need permission. The explosion tore through the mountain seconds later, heat and noise swallowing everything. When Lang opened her eyes, she was lying in the snow outside, ears ringing, air thick with smoke. The facility was gone, just a burning wound in the white landscape. Chen crawled toward her, coughing. You alive? Mostly. He looked back at the fire. Wilson. She didn't answer, just pulled the data chip from her pocket, the metal still warm. They made camp miles away, too exhausted to speak. The night was eerily still, only the crackle of their small fire and the whisper of wind through dead trees. Chen finally said, What's on that chip? Proof. Of what? That everything we fought for was built on a lie. He stared into the fire. Then what now? She looked up at the stars, bright, cold, distant. Now we show the world what they tried to hide. He nodded slowly. You think the truth will make a difference? She smiled faintly. Maybe not, but silence never does. For a long while neither spoke. The night stretched endless, the fire dying to embers. Lang reached for her rifle, set it beside her, and whispered half to herself, half to the stars. They wanted precision without doubt, but they forgot precision without purpose is just noise. Chen looked at her, and purpose. She met his gaze, steady and calm. Purpose is what you choose after everything else has been taken. In the distance, the last flare from the facility burned out, leaving only darkness. And in that darkness, for the first time, Harper Lang felt something unfamiliar, not fear, not obedience, but clarity. The mission had changed. This time, she wasn't pulling the trigger for them. She was aiming for the truth. Why did the truth feel heavier than the rifle she carried? The world below the mountains was waking up, though the sky still carried the bruised gray of dawn. Lang and Chen moved through the forest, following the narrow trail that led to a service road half buried under snow. Every step hurt, every breath burned, but it wasn't exhaustion that slowed her. It was the weight of what she carried in her pocket, the chip. They reached an abandoned ranger station by mid-morning. The solar panels were cracked, but a generator still coughed to life after a few stubborn pulls. Inside, Lang spread a battered map across the table. Nearest airfield 70 kilometers south, Chen said. If we can make it, maybe. Maybe nothing, Lang cut in. If we transmit this, every intelligence agency on the planet will triangulate our signal within minutes. He sighed, so what's the play? She stared at the chip, the small metal shard that had already cost too many lives. We leak it the old way, physically, controlled drop. He frowned. To who? The one person who won't bury it. Her eyes hardened. A journalist named Mara Vega, investigative, used to cover black ops before they silenced her. She's still out there, off-grid, somewhere in Eastern Europe. Chen studied her expression. You sure she'll believe you? She won't have to, the data will. He nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. So we get to her. Lang folded the map. No, I get to her. You head south, cross the border, vanish. You've done enough. Not happening, he said. If command's after you, they'll hunt me too. Might as well die for something that matters. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once, a silent acceptance between soldiers who'd already buried too many words. By nightfall, they reached the foothills, old mining country, half ghost town, half frozen memory. They took shelter in a derelict rail station, walls covered with graffiti and bullet holes. Lang sat by the window, cleaning her rifle with slow, mechanical precision. Chen watched her for a while before speaking. When you were in that program, did you ever believe in what they told you? Lang's hands didn't stop moving. Belief wasn't part of the training. That's not what I asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, I believed that precision was morality, that if you're accurate enough, you can justify anything. One shot, one life, one equation. She set down the cleaning rod. But equations don't bleed. People do. Silence settled between them again, heavy, honest. Then she added, they taught us to see from distance, not to feel it. Chen smiled faintly. Looks like you're feeling it now. She didn't smile back, but there was something softer in her eyes. That's what scares me. They left before dawn. The snow had thinned into rain by the time they reached the borderlands, vast, empty plains where nothing survived except ghosts and soldiers pretending to be neither. Lang raised her binoculars. A convoy, 3 armored vehicles moved along the far ridge, too disciplined for smugglers, too quiet for locals. They found us again, Chen said. She studied their formation. No insignia, that's not command, that's private. Wilson's reach runs deeper than I thought. What do we do? Ambush. They moved fast, setting up on a high ridge overlooking the narrow pass. Lang checked wind, humidity, drop. Each adjustment was automatic, precise, familiar. When the lead vehicle entered range, she whispered, range, 1900, target 1. Chen counted softly, on you. She squeezed the trigger. The round tore through the engine block, igniting it instantly. Flames erupted. The convoy scattered, soldiers dismounting, shouting. Another shot, another silhouette fell. Controlled breathing, controlled violence. Chen lobbed a flash grenade down the slope, white light exploding across the rain-slick ground. When the smoke cleared, the survivors were gone. Lang descended the ridge, checking the wreck. Inside the vehicle, she found a briefcase, encrypted comms gear, and a file marked LONGSHOT reclamation. She opened it. Inside, a photograph, her, standing at Falcon Base, smiling, a target drawn around her face in red ink. Chen looked over her shoulder. They're not just after you, they're hunting you. Lang exhaled slowly. Then we're already out of time. They traveled by night for 3 more days, crossing valleys, avoiding checkpoints, sleeping under bridges. Each sunrise felt sharper, like the world itself was holding its breath. On the 4th morning, they reached a coastal village, gray, quiet, almost deserted. Lang found an old fishing shack overlooking the sea and set up a small transmitter. This is it, Chen said. We send the signal, hand off to Vega's network, and pray she's still listening. Lang inserted the chip. The screen blinked, then came alive with encrypted code, Wilson's data spilling like blood across digital veins. Names, coordinates, programs that weren't supposed to exist. Transmission ready, Chen said. On your mark. Lang hesitated. Once it's out, there's no going back. He smiled faintly. That's kind of the point, isn't it? She pressed the key. The transmitter hummed, signal climbing. But before the bar reached halfway, the screen glitched, static interference, then total blackout. Jam signal, Chen shouted. Lang cursed. They found us faster than I thought. A second later, the roof exploded inward. She hit the ground hard, ears ringing. Dust and splinters filled the air. Boots hit the floor. Voices barked commands, American accents distorted through comms masks. Targets confirmed, take them alive. Lang rolled, fired twice. 2 men down, a third ducked behind cover. Chen grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the back exit. Go, go. They burst out into the rain. Bullets shredded the wooden walls behind them. Lang fired over her shoulder, covering their retreat. They dove behind a stone wall near the cliff edge. Below, waves crashed against the rocks, no retreat left but the sea. We're cornered, Chen said, panting. Lang scanned the cliffs, calculating. Not yet. She slung the rifle over her shoulder, pulled a smoke grenade and tossed it high. Gray plumes billowed, masking their position. Chen, when I move, you run. He shook his head. No chance. Do it, that's an order. He hesitated, then nodded, eyes hard. Lang burst from cover, firing in controlled bursts. Bullets snapped through the air around her. She dropped 1, 2, 3 men before taking cover again behind a rusted truck. Chen sprinted down the slope, clutching the backup drive she'd handed him. He didn't look back. When the smoke cleared, Lang was gone. Hours later, Chen stumbled into the docks. The rain had turned cold, hard, relentless. He found an old cargo ship and slipped aboard, hiding in the engine compartment. The drive pressed against his chest, warm with purpose. Behind him, in the village, distant explosions echoed. Lang had stayed behind. He didn't see her again for 3 days. When he did, it was through static, a flickering transmission on a stolen radio. Her voice was low, ragged. Chen, if you hear this, you made it. Good, don't stop. Vega's signal will find you near Bucharest. Trust no one. A pause. They think they killed me. Let them. Another pause, softer this time. You were right. There's still a person in here. Don't let them erase that. Then silence. Chen sat there in the dark, gripping the radio until his knuckles turned white. Somewhere across the continent, Lang moved through another city, hood up, hair short, new face, new name. The kind of ghost that learns to haunt systems instead of battlefields. She'd seen what they made of her. She'd seen what she could be without them. And now, the only thing sharper than her aim was her conviction. She no longer needed orders. She didn't even need forgiveness. She just needed the truth to survive longer than she did. That night, in a rented room above a mechanic's garage, she activated a burner terminal and logged into an encrypted network under a name that hadn't existed for years. Longshot 1. A single user joined. Longshot 2, you shouldn't be alive. Lang smiled faintly, neither should you. Longshot 2, the world isn't ready for what's on that chip. Longshot 1, it doesn't need to be ready. It just needs to see. Silence on the line, then a final message. Longshot 2, they'll come for you. Longshot 1, they already did. She closed the terminal, leaned back and looked out the window. The city lights below blurred through the rain, fragments of humanity she'd fought to remember. Her reflection in the glass was calm, determined, human. They built her to follow commands. Now she was rewriting her own. Why did she feel calm when she should have been terrified? The city below was a storm of light and noise, but inside the narrow apartment everything was still. Lang sat at the edge of the bed, wrapping gauze around her shoulder where shrapnel had torn through 3 days earlier. Each turn of the bandage was methodical, precise, controlled. Pain was familiar, predictable. The knock came exactly when she expected it. 3 soft taps, then silence. Lang reached for the pistol under her jacket. Who is it? Mara Vega, came a low, steady voice. Lang opened the door. The woman standing there looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Sharp eyes, dark hair, a presence that filled the room without needing permission. She studied Lang for a moment, the way reporters do when they're deciding if you're worth believing. So it's true, Vega said. The ghost sniper from Falcon Base Lives. Lang stepped aside. You got my message. I got your blood trail. Vega entered, her eyes flicking over the makeshift maps, open laptops and coded printouts scattered across the room. If half of what you sent me is real, it's the biggest military scandal in decades. If it's fake, you just painted a target on both our heads. It's real. Vega's gaze softened slightly. Then you already know they'll kill you for it. Lang's voice was calm. They've been trying. They sat across from each other at the small table. Rain pattered against the glass. Vega placed a recorder between them but didn't turn it on yet. "Tell me about Longshot." Lang hesitated, then said, "It started as a precision enhancement program, part neuroscience, part conditioning. They claimed it was about improving decision-making under pressure. But it was. It was about removing hesitation, about taking human morality and turning it into math. And you were the prototype." "Yes." Vega leaned forward. "So what went wrong?" Lang met her gaze. "Nothing. That was the problem. It worked." The journalist's face hardened. "How many missions?" Lang looked down at her hands, scarred, steady, honest. "Enough to know what silence sounds like when it's not peace." For a moment, Vega didn't speak. Then she reached into her coat and placed a drive on the table. "This is a dead man's switch. If anything happens to me, the data you gave me goes public. Every file, every name." Lang nodded slowly. "You're braver than most soldiers I've met." Vega gave a faint smile. "Comes with the job." Before they could speak again, the window shattered. Lang grabbed Vega, dragging her down as the glass exploded inward. Bullets ripped through the wall. A drone hovered outside, its rotors humming like mechanical hornets. "Stay down," Lang snapped, grabbing the Barrett she'd hidden under the bed. One breath, one shot. The drone detonated midair, showering sparks across the alley. But the damage was done. "They know where we are," Vega said. Lang scanned the street below, black SUVs closing in, headlights off. "Then we move." They bolted down the stairwell, Vega clutching the drive, Lang covering rear. Outside, the rain had turned into a deluge. The streets gleamed like black glass. Lang spotted an old delivery truck idling near the corner, its driver slumped in the seat, unconscious, not dead. She hotwired it in seconds. "Get in." Vega hesitated. "You always this calm during chaos." Lang started the engine, "Only when it's earned." The truck roared into the street, tires screaming. Behind them, headlights appeared, 2, then 4, then 6. Bullets shattered the side mirrors. Lang drove like a ghost through the rain, every turn memorized before it happened. Vega clutched the dash. "Where are we going?" "To finish this." They broke through the city's industrial edge and into the countryside. Lang pulled onto an abandoned airstrip, engines echoing through the emptiness. She killed the lights. Silence fell, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. Vega looked at her. "Why here?" Lang opened the glove compartment and pulled out a small transponder. "Because they think I'm dead. We'll make sure they keep thinking that." She placed the transponder on the ground and smashed it under her boot. "Now we're ghosts." Vega took a shaky breath. "You realize what you're doing, right? Once I publish this, every name in those files becomes a target." "I know. You could disappear, start over. No one would find you." Lang's voice was quiet, steady. "That's the problem, I'd find me." Vega studied her for a long moment. "You remind me of a story I covered once. A Marine who saved a village and never spoke about it. When I asked him why, he said, because it was supposed to be done, not remembered. You're like that, aren't you?" Lang looked out at the rain. "No, I'm just tired of pretending silence is noble." The journalist smiled sadly. "Then let's make some noise." At dawn, they reached a coastal signal station, an old Cold War relic still connected to the satellite uplink network. Lang powered it manually, fingers moving over the rusted console like it was an old friend. "This'll work?" Vega asked. "It'll reach every major network, encrypted or not. Once it's sent, there's no undoing it." Lang looked at her. "That's the point." They uploaded the files. Dozens of gigabytes, long-shot documents, experiments, classified operations, casualty lists. The truth bleeding into the world, one byte at a time. When the upload hit 90%, Lang's stomach tightened. Something was off. Then she saw it, a faint light blinking red near the panel. A tracking beacon. "They're coming," she said. Vega froze. How much longer? 10 seconds. Engines in the distance. Rotor blades. Lang raised her rifle. Finish it. Vega's hands shook as she pressed the final command. Upload complete. Lang smiled faintly. Then it's done. The first helicopter appeared through the rain, black and sleek, guns mounted under its nose. Lang fired once, hitting the sensor array. The craft veered, smoke trailing. A second chopper opened fire. Lang dove for cover, shielding Vega. Bullets tore through the walls. Go, Lang shouted. Get to the coast. Vega hesitated. What about you? Someone has to make sure they follow me, not you. Vega's voice broke. Harper. Go. The journalist ran into the storm, clutching the drive like it was hope itself. Lang reloaded, stepped into the open, and fired again. Her shots echoed across the cliffs, measured, unhurried, beautiful in their inevitability. She wasn't fighting to win. She was fighting to hold time long enough for the truth to breathe. When her last magazine ran dry, she dropped the rifle, drew her sidearm, and smiled, a quiet, tired smile. A flash of light, impact, silence. And then nothing. For a moment the world stopped. Hours later, when the rain cleared, the coast was empty. The helicopters were gone. The signal station burned quietly, its metal skeleton glowing against the horizon. Mara Vega made it to the port town at sunrise. She walked straight into a press office, drenched, shaking, and handed the drive to the first technician she saw. Upload this, she said. Now. By noon, the story broke. U.S. military experiment exposed. Program created emotionless soldiers. Dozens dead. Billions in secret funding. The networks flooded with footage, training logs, test subjects, recordings of command briefings. One video showed Lang herself, standing in a shooting range, eyes blank, voice calm. The world watched in horror, then in awe. Because behind every order, every precision shot, every silence, they saw something else. Humanity trying to survive its own perfection. A week later, Vega sat before the cameras, eyes tired but alive. She wanted the world to know, she said quietly, not to forgive her, to remember her. Reporters called it the long-shot leak. Governments denied it. Command disavowed it. But the truth, once free, doesn't return to its cage. Some said Harper Lang died that night on the cliffs. Some swore she was spotted in the mountains months later. No one knew for sure. But in a small coastal village, a boy once told a story of a woman who lived in the hills, quiet, scarred, teaching him how to breathe before he pulled a trigger. He asked her once if she'd been a soldier. She smiled and said, "I used to be a weapon that forgot it was human." Then she looked out at the sea and added softly, "Now I remember." And sometimes, when the wind carried the right kind of silence, you could almost hear her voice again, calm, steady, resolute. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Why did the world move on, and yet never forget her name? Months passed. The headlines faded, as headlines always do, but the echo of what Harper Lang had done refused to die. Governments formed committees, generals gave statements, investigations promised justice. And yet, in the quiet corners of the world, among soldiers, journalists, and ghosts, her story lived like a low-burning fire that refused to go out. Mara Vega stood at the edge of the same cliffs where it had all ended. The sea below roared against the rocks, restless, endless. She wore Lang's old field jacket now, the same one she'd found half buried near the wreckage. A small tear in the shoulder, a patch of blood faded to rust. The air was cold. Her recorder clicked on with a soft hum. "This is Mara Vega," she said, voice barely above the wind. "It's been 109 days since the long-shot files went public. The world is quieter now, maybe too quiet." She paused, listening to the sea. Governments say they've dismantled the program. They say the labs are gone, the funding cut, the files deleted. but you can't delete what you've taught people to do. Her hand brushed the old dog tags she wore around her neck. Lang, Harper M. They said she was a traitor, then they said she was a hero. Maybe she was neither. Maybe she was just tired of pretending those two things were different. Vega's voice faltered. Some stories don't end when the shooting stops. Some just start telling themselves in silence. She turned off the recorder and let the wind take the words. Far from that cliff, across continents and cities, the world had changed in small, invisible ways. A senator resigned without warning. A general was tried in secret. A dozen soldiers once listed as missing were found buried beneath facilities that didn't exist on any map. And then new programs were shut down before they began, quietly, efficiently, because someone somewhere had learned that ghosts still watched. In one of those cities, a young cadet sat in a darkened library, scrolling through the leaked documents. She paused at a photograph. A woman in combat gear, calm eyes, wind-blown hair, sighting down the scope of a rifle. The caption read, Staff Sergeant Harper Lang, subject of Project Longshot. The cadet stared at the image for a long time before whispering, "She looks human." Her instructor standing behind her nodded. She was. The girl frowned. Was. He smiled faintly. People like that never really die, they just stop needing permission to live. Outside, the city hummed with the same noise Lang had once listened to from her apartment window, a symphony of life too loud to ignore. Cars, voices, laughter, rain. Life. And somewhere within that noise, something else stirred, not memory but persistence. In the early morning hours, in a small mountain village far from cameras or questions, a woman walked the dirt path toward a single cabin at the edge of the forest. Her limp was faint now, her hair shorter, streaked with gray. She carried no weapon, only a pack slung across her shoulder, heavy with supplies and silence. Children ran past her on the trail, chasing each other with sticks, laughter breaking the cold air. One tripped, fell, scraped his knee. The woman knelt, tore a strip from her sleeve and wrapped the cut without a word. "Thank you, ma'am," the boy said, blinking back tears. She smiled. "You'll be fine, just don't run from everything that hurts." He looked at her strangely, not understanding, and ran off to join the others. Lang stood there for a moment, watching them disappear. Then she turned back toward the cabin. Inside, the space was simple. A bed, a small stove, and a single shelf filled with notebooks. Each notebook bore the same inscription on the cover, Longshot/Lessons Learned. She sat by the window and opened the latest one. Her handwriting was precise but slow, thoughtful. Day 327. I don't miss the mission. I miss believing the mission mattered. She paused, pen hovering over the page. Mara was right, truth isn't enough. It needs people willing to live with it. Maybe that's the real fight. Not between countries or commanders, but between silence and what it costs. The fire in the stove crackled softly. Snow began to fall again outside, gentle, unhurried. Lang leaned back, eyes closed. The sound reminded her of gunfire once. Now it just sounded like peace. She thought of Chen. She thought of Wilson. She thought of every name on that roster she'd seen flash across the monitors. The ones who hadn't made it out. The ones who couldn't. Then she whispered something only the fire could hear. "I'm sorry it took this long to remember who I was supposed to be." A knock came at the door. She froze. For a second, the soldier inside her woke, that old reflex that never really died. But when she opened the door, it wasn't a threat. It was a girl, 15, maybe 16, military jacket 2 sizes too big, holding a folded newspaper. "You're Miss Vega's friend, right?" the girl asked shyly. Lang's expression softened. "I used to be. She said if I ever found you, to give you this." The girl handed her the paper, and left before Lang could ask how she'd known where to look. Lang unfolded it slowly. Headline: Investigative reporter Mara Vega dies in car crash. Officials suspect foul play. She stared at the words for a long, unblinking moment. Then she folded the paper carefully and set it beside the fire. No tears, no sound, just stillness. Later, when the stars came out, she stepped outside, looking up at the sky Vega once called the only ceiling truth recognizes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finishing what I couldn't." A breeze rolled down from the ridge, carrying the faint scent of pine and ash. Lang closed her eyes and let it pass through her. She wasn't mourning anymore. Not really. She was remembering. The next morning, she packed the notebooks into her pack, slung it over her shoulder, and walked down the path leading away from the cabin. Where she was going, no one would ask for names. No one would know the things she'd done or the things she refused to do. But somewhere, someone would need help. And she'd be there. Not as a sniper, not as a soldier. Just as someone who remembered that survival meant more than breathing. As she reached the ridge, the first light of dawn cut through the clouds. She stopped, watching it break across the horizon, gold and quiet and absolute. For the first time in her life, Harper Lang didn't think about angles or trajectories. She thought about warmth, about people she'd lost, about the ones who might never know her name but would live freer because she existed. And for the first time she smiled. Not the thin, practiced smile of someone following protocol, but the kind of smile that happens when you finally stop aiming at the world and start belonging to it. She whispered, almost too softly to hear. "They train me to be perfect. But life isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be real." She turned and walked toward the sun. And though no cameras followed, no headlines wrote her ending, the world she left behind began to change, one truth at a time. Somewhere, a cadet refused an unlawful order. Somewhere, a journalist published a story no one wanted told. Somewhere, a commander paused before sending young soldiers into another war. And maybe, somewhere in the echoes between silence and action, a quiet voice whispered, the voice of a woman who once took an impossible shot at 5,300 meters and hit something no bullet could. Conscience. Because in the end, Harper Lang's legacy wasn't the shot she took. It was the silence she refused to keep. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.